Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review, and today we are featuring this. This is part of the Transformers Bumblebee Cyberverse Adventures. We have Bumbleswoop, and Bumbleswoop is a combiner that combines Bumblebee with Dinobot Swoop. Alright, so to clarify things, Transformers, the Cyberverse line, it's not necessarily a toy line I'm really interested in. I have a handful of figures, but for the most part, it's not really my cup of tea. But the minute I learned that I was able to complete an entire set of Dinobots, I went out and I hunted down all the Dinobot characters, Grimlock, Swoop, Sludge, Slug, and Snarl. And this is the set that comes with Swoop. So we're going to take a look at this. The package design, it's very child friendly. As you can see here, it's meant to be like handled. That's why there's this open window. On the side, nice image of Bumblebee. On the other side, I like this image a lot. It's an image of all the Dinobots. You have Swoop, you have Grimlock, you have Sludge, you have Snarl, and then you have Slag or Slug. And then on the back, we have Bumblebee over here, and then we have Swoop. We have both of their alt modes featured at the bottom. Bumblebee still turns into automobile. Swoop kind of turns into a pterodactyl, and then when you combine them together, you get Bumbleswoop. Dinobots unite. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at this, and just to warn you in advance, I'm horrible at doing on-camera Transformer toy reviews. I never feel comfortable transforming them right on the spot because I always run into problems. And a good example of that is if you check out my Grimlock review, and for 20 minutes I can't figure out how to transform deluxe class Grimlock. It's very embarrassing. So hopefully this one's a little easier to transform. I grew up during the 80s, and the old G1 Transformers, those are a piece of cake to transform. Some of these newer ones, they require like Grimlock. I didn't understand. It was like it's a small like 5.5-inch figure, but it takes 27 steps to transform them into the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Whereas like the original toy, I think you could get the transformation done in maybe like 6 or 8 steps, and it's a larger figure, so it's kind of ridiculous. I'm hoping this is easy because I don't want to be stuck here for 20 minutes trying to transform them. Alright, so first impressions of Bumblebee and Swoop while they're in the tray. I'm excited to check out Swoop. Swoop looks pretty neat. Bumblebee looks like a very basic, kid-friendly Transformer. This guy looks like he probably transforms in maybe like, I don't know, a handful of steps, which I'm hoping for. Alright, let's get to it. Let's take these guys out. So the Cyberverse line is aimed primarily at children. It's not necessarily like aimed at the older hardcore collector. But for me, I don't mind it so much. I think this line of toys is a great introduction for younger children into the world of Transformers. I've had so many friends that, you know, I'd go to their houses and stuff, and their children would be into Transformers. But sometimes the actual transformation of some of the toys is just so complex that a lot of the time they just end up breaking the toys, or the pieces fall off inadvertently and they just lose stuff. A toy like this might not appeal to a hardcore collector, but for a child, it's, you know, it's straight to the point. You have Bumblebee in the robot form, and then, you know, with a few simple steps, you know, you'll have his alt mode, which I'm trying to do right now. And I think this is it. I don't think the head tucks in. I might be wrong on that though. Yeah, this is a very weird, lazy design. Like the alt mode, the car is actually pretty decent, but for whatever reason, the head doesn't do anything. You know, it'd be nice if it actually folded in, but it doesn't. So this one's fun. It's easy to transform. You know, if you have little ones that are into Bumblebee, and everyone is, you know, quick, simple transformation. And I love the quick, simple transformations. Hopefully the same is to be said with Swoop. All right, here is Swoop. If I had to guess, I'm gonna try to figure this one out. This looks a little bit pretty simple. Oh wow, that's pretty neat. Don't know what's going on there. If this is anything like the G1 Swoop, I'm assuming the legs fold up. Like that. Yeah, and there you have Swoop. Yeah, so I love I love these much more simplified Transformer figures. I don't want to sit there for like 20 minutes to try to figure out how something transforms. You know, if I could get done in a couple of seconds, I'm all for that. So yeah, here we have Swoop in his pterodactyl form. Since we're on the subject of Swoop, real quick, here is the original G1 Swoop. This is not my childhood toy. This belongs, or used to belong, to my friend Dave. So Dave, if you're watching this video, thank you very much for Swoop. Swoop, the original G1 figure, was actually the smallest of the Dinobots. As you can see here, it's kind of small. Transformation-wise, was really simple. So the new Swoop right here from the Cyberverse line, it actually shares some similar transformation technique. But in terms of the alt mode, I think the G1 still looks great. I love how the wings are a lot more smoother in their shape. Has a much more graceful contour line. I really like the old plastic chrome. You know, this was very common back in the 80s. I love the transparent head. It's pretty neat. And so we have the two different pterodactyl forms. And it's nice too with the new figure. You know, it's kind of in scale with the original one, but a little bit bigger, especially in the robot mode. And let's get this guy transformed back. So his tail, which also doubles as a weapon, you can remove it. That. Legs fold down. Feet come out just like the old one. And then the chest folds in. Whoops, there goes his arm. Shoot. Alright, just give me a moment. Let me see if I can find it. A nice feature with these, with the modern Transformers, is that they're also engineered that when stuff like that happens, it's almost like a fail-safe feature. It's not going to necessarily break the toy. Like on a lot of Transformers, you'll find that the limbs break off pretty easily, and that's more so to prevent the kids from actually really breaking the toy. All right, so here's Swoop, and then here's his weapon. So if you want to make Bumbleswoop, let's take a look at that. Here's the instruction manual. Alright, it seems to be pretty self-explanatory, I think. Let me take this off. Alright, I'm having issues with this hand. It keeps on popping off the arm. Alright, there we go. So it looks like this guy needs to be in car mode. There's the head. Oh, this is very simple. And there's a socket here, and then you just plug his head in. It's keyed, so that it'll only go in one way. And there we go. All right, my first impressions of Bumbleswoop after he's transformed. Even though it's a simple transformation, to be honest, there's something really strangely satisfying about this figure. If you grew up during the 80s, there were a lot of weird, like, imported robot toys that were brought to the States. And, you know, there were a bunch of, like, combiners. You know, besides Voltron, which was probably the most popular combiner during the 80s, there were a lot of, like, combining robot toys from Japan. And for some reason, this really reminds me of something like that. Like, there was this one combiner in the 80s. I believe it was called Getz Blocker Multiforce 14. If I remember that name correctly. So it was like comprised of, I think, 14 small vehicles. And it might have, I want to say it might have belonged to the Diaclone line, or it might have been an offshoot. And all 14 of these vehicles would combine haphazardly and just make this giant robot. And the design aesthetic of this feels very like retro 80s Japanese robot. So to be honest, at first I thought this looked really silly, but then after handling it, I just had flashbacks to my youth of like those older Japanese toys. So yeah, there's something really oddly satisfying about combining this. The aesthetic, as basic and as weird as it might look to like a modern Transformers fan, especially a younger collector, they might think this is, you know, not worth the time or effort. But for me, you know, someone that grew up like on the 80s old, like retro Japanese kind of style of robot, there's something very appealing to me about this. You know, I don't think this is for everybody. You know, this is really aimed at kids. But I do think that if you're a child and you got this, I think the end result of combining the two figures is actually pretty satisfying, and it's kind of neat. You know, even though it's very limited in articulation, and this guy is not going to tip over, you know, especially since his legs aren't articulated. So it feels a little bit solid. I love the face. It just looks so goofy, but it's a neat figure. Yeah, so this took me by surprise. I didn't think I'd like this as much as I do. Because I really just got this for Dinobot Swoop. I didn't really think I'd enjoy the combined mode that much. But looking at it now and handling it, it's like it really takes me back to my childhood. So I think this is a great toy. Alright, so if I was to rate this figure on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to be biased. I'm going to say this figure is at the most an 8.5 and at the lowest a 7.5. I think if you're a younger fan or a much more hardcore collector, this is going to be an easy pass. But if you have like nostalgia for like the old robot toys that you might have grown up on during the late 70s and early 80s, this is something I think you should at least check out. Like I said, I had, for some reason, just handling this, this really just took me back to my childhood. And as goofy and as under-detailed as this might look to other Transformer toys, I think there's some value in this, especially being an older fan and collector. But if you're much more hardcore about your Transformers, you might just pass on this altogether. But yeah, neat toy. The transformations are simple. You know, if you have a younger one, this would be a great introduction to like the world of Dinobots and Transformers. And of course, you know, which kid doesn't love Bumblebee? You know, it seems like nowadays every child just has to grow up with a Bumblebee figure. It's almost like Buzz Lightyear. All right, so with that being said, once again, my name is Lou. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a returning viewer or subscriber, thank you so much for your continued likes, comments, and support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll talk to you soon.